Hello, my name is Pavle Sabic, and we're here with Beryl Consulting and Tell Me More Ventures to interview Jonathan Kay, who's with Apptopia. And this is going to be a very fascinating conversation about mobile consumer engagement data. So, Jonathan, please tell me about the organization and what exactly that you do.
Yep. So I'm the founder of the company, and essentially what we do is we collect data on how consumers use apps, mobile apps on their phone. And we collect deep kind of usage data on the sessions, what they're doing in the sessions. And we're aggregating that data into signals that hedge funds, both quant and fundamental, are trading on.
Okay. And is it predominantly hedge funds that are using this data, or what other type of institutional investors? Is there any retail investors that you guys are working with?
So no retail investors. So it's primarily hedge funds.
All hedge funds
Yep.
that we work with. Okay. And then what type of data exactly are we talking about? Can you give us like a couple of examples? So it's consumer data. I would imagine that it's things like Spotify, or we mentioned before dating apps. Like,
Yep.
What type of data are we looking at?
So we can provide data on anything from like how many people download the app, to how much time a day they spend on the app, to what the rate of retention is on the app.
Okay.
And where things start to get very interesting is where you can actually start to analyze different cohorts of users. So like, hey, Instacart goes public. Are new users that Instacart paid a lot of money to acquire retaining the app at the same rate as the organic users that used it pre-IPO? And you can see how that gets interesting, right?
Yeah, definitely. So how about Spotify, let's say, those kind of consumer data versus, Apple or other sort of audiobook and streaming applications?
Yep. So for subscribing companies like that, for subscribing streaming services, typically what we're doing is, let's say Spotify has been increasing their price. So they've been reaching some certain level of saturation in the United States. And so in order to hit certain growth trajectory, they actually have to increase their price.
Right.
And so one thing that we did for customers is we analyzed their price increase in June 2023 compared to their price increase in June 2024. And we looked at how both events impacted churn. And what we saw is that they increased churn about 1% in 2023 and only 0.5% in 2024.
Okay.
And so you can actually increase the accuracy at which you're forecasting growth by understanding how future price increases would impact the growth of the user base.
Got it. Understood. And so this type of, so if it's not public information necessarily, but some of it can be sort of classified as unstructured data to some extent, along with credit card debts and a lot of these, right? So Amex, I'm sure, point of sale is very important to potential clients and hedge funds. But then they would say, well, this isn't that new. We've had this around for a while. So what's the differentiating factor of Apptopia?
Yep. And so take Netflix as an example. Like if you decide that you're going to stop subscribing to Netflix, you stopped engaging on Netflix before you chose to cancel it. And so the credit card data is going to tell you when you stopped paying. And it's not even going to tell you when you chose to cancel. It's only going to tell you when you missed your last billing cycle. And so what happens is you might stop actually watching shows on Netflix 45 days before you cancel. Right. Then you canceled and your billing period isn't for another 15 days. So you might get the signal from credit card data that somebody canceled 60 days after I saw a trend drop in engagement on the data.
Okay, so it's a precursor. Your app allows almost a precursor of preemptive information to what might happen in the future.
Big time. But then you take industries like social media, which are driven by ad revenue. Right. And time spent in app is the currency, right? If you're monetizing via ads, or if you're Amazon, like basket size has a pretty direct correlation with time spent in app as well.
Interesting. So you can, with Amazon, like say with basket size, you can see how many people are selecting things in their wish list versus in the basket versus being sold, and all of these nuances in between.
Yeah, and in general, the point I'm trying to make is that like, if you're buying like a piece of Halloween candy, it's a transactional thing. If you're buying a bike for your kid, you're spending 10 times as much money, you're spending more time researching it. And so the time is a good proxy for like how much money you're spending. Right. And that's across sectors.
Across sectors.
Yeah.
And which sectors, talking about which sectors and industries do you guys focus on, and which ones are you kind of developing more products for?
Yep. So I would say broadly consumer internet. Like most purchase sectors today would be like fintech, social media, sports betting, dating. And I would say we're starting to expand a lot more into like ride hailing food delivery and different e-commerce.
Terrific. And is there thought leadership that you do in the back of this data where folks can find some of the information and try and figure out, leading signals and then might not thought of themselves?
Yep. And so we have like two different data sets, one very deep device panel and one kind of algorithm driven data set. And we provide a bunch of reporting and KPI forecasting on top of that.
Right.
And so essentially we are a data company. We want to sell data, but we sell KPI forecast as a way to like lead the horse to water a little bit, like show people how you can combine the different signals together to actually make money.
Got it. Understood. And so in terms of a little bit of a forward looking question, where are you seeing some of your clients exploring investments in the future or being tripped up by some of the challenges that are facing us? So another way to ask the question is, what is Apptopia seeing in the future in the next 5 to 10 years in terms of, how do we use consumer data to help investment decisions?
Yeah, so at a very high level, like we all talk about how much we hate aggregate data. And the reality is that you hear the really, really big firms in the world talk about, hey, give me raw data. And like in data providers, there's a joke in the industry that nobody really wants raw data. Right. They just want like you to do the dirty work and then give them the raw data. Right? Yeah, exactly. But the reality is that aggregate data is a problem. Mm-hmm. And it's because, I'll give you a really simple example, Coinbase, right? 10% of their users drive like 90% of all the revenue for the company. Yet people track a monthly active user metric of millions of consumer traders that don't have any impact to Coinbase's revenue. Right. And so the reality is that you need to start de-aggregating the data. Otherwise, you're going to start seeing false signals. And so what we're seeing is we're seeing people start to stop thinking about mobile data only as just like a mosaic channel check and actually start to dive a little bit deeper and look into specific cohorts of users that like drive leading indicators for the businesses.
Fascinating. And then, so closing statement. What is the ambition for Apptopia and the big picture? Where do they hope to be in the near future?
Yep. And so I believe that like most people today that collect consumer data do it in a very disingenuous, unethical way. Right. And we have figured out how to collect first-party data at scale and in a very privacy compliance first way. Right. And so I expect by the end of next year, we'll have one of the largest US consumer panels on mobile that exists. And
it's secure, and it's a big part of your organization. So
yeah, we bring the consumer into the process. So the consumer gets value from our panel, in addition to just giving data passively in the background.
Okay, how does the consumer get the value from it?
It's a little bit of the special sauce. Yeah. But the reality is that we bring the consumer in, and the consumer is getting like a value exchange in addition. Yes, not only is there transparency, not only is there consent, all these things, but the user gets value, which actually makes the user want to stay along, which gives you a more stable panel, which results in better data, less false positives.
That's phenomenal. That's what we need. We need more data for shrewder and smarter investment decisions, but that is secure and ethical.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much. Jonathan Kay from Apptopia.